Dandara is an indie game published by Raw Fury and created by the developers over there at Long Hat House, which is composed of two people from Belo Horizonte, Brazil. The two creators go by the name of Lucas and Yall. I don't want to butcher his name, I just call him Jay. It was released on February 6, 2018, and since its first announcement trailer that I saw back in May 7th, 2016, I have noticed certain changes to the look of the game, such as the changes to the levels and character designs of the enemies. Compared to enemy appearances from how they first looked originally, I see how the creators of this game made their designs a little bit more defined and detailed while others were completely changed. However, the gameplay and the behavior of the enemies as far as their attack patterns remained the same throughout Dandara's development. For this review, I'll be rocking out with the PlayStation 4 version, so let's get into it. The presentation of Dandara looks artistic within its way of telling the story through its land and through its ambiguous display of imagery. I say this because within each section of the game there is a theme that goes along with it, and one of the fun parts of this game is asking why. The various sections has this level that depict themes as city elements, some futuristic and other sections are just, well, otherworldly. The environments and level designs look awesome, with each of them distinguishing itself from another. But of course, the primary appealing thing that demands attention is how this game flawlessly adheres to its directionalist principle. Looking at the smooth and crisp animations of the main protagonist when she fires her blast, when she twirls doing transitions from one level to another, or even how the perspective of the level being switched around on a dime makes things look a little bit more interesting. Dandara from a technical aspect runs smoothly. There were no frame rate drops, no glitches, or even slowdowns. Some of the character designs have this cartoonish but foreboding element to their appeal, which could help clarify the form of humanity's psychological attribute they represent, or quite possibly characteristics of philosophical ideas, or even social aspects that may physically personify. The presentation and artwork of Dandara is excellent, even in the beginning with this little cutscene is nice. I only wish that there was more of these to flesh out the game just a little bit more though. The uniqueness of this game in its entirety perfectly warrants the visuals presented. The story of Dandara tells the tale of a land known as the Salt that was once a peaceful place before something known as the Golden Idea came along and just wrecked everything. This is what you are told, simple but not necessarily detailed as to what the figures are, or who exactly Dandara is, or where exactly this game is taking place. When I was playing this game, certain words began sticking out such as oppression and freedom. Then I came across this little tidbit of information. There was once a historical figure known as Dandara that shares the same name as this game and its protagonist. Dandara, or to be more accurate, Dandara dos Palmeiras, was a legendary warrior and wife of King Zumbi dos Palmeiras, who watched over a settlement known as Cambalo, a place where many slaves through different methods freed themselves and went to reside. This place was located in Brazil during the 1600s, notably. During this time, Dandara had fought off the Dutch and the Portuguese from enslaving their people. One day, however, after this huge battle, the people of Colombo and the colonizers signed a peace treaty that didn't end very well at all. This resulted in their people being enslaved anyway by the colonizers and the leader of Colombo being killed by poison. On February 6, 1694, Dandara was captured and instead of being a slave, she chose death and offed herself. It's kinda hardcore, I know, but look at the date when it happened. February 6th, the same day that this game was released. Knowing this little piece of history makes seeing this load screen hold a little bit more weight. This also puts in perspective the narrative of this game, which begins to make a little bit more sense to me. Now this is where I get a tad bit theoretical. What if the salt and even the names of certain places serves as metaphors as a way of getting across an overall message? But what overall message, you ask? Well, let's get into it. Now follow me on this one. Let's look at the term salt, which according to this game is where this game is taking place. If you are familiar with the biblical text, specifically Matthew 5:13, it reads, "Ye are the salt of the earth. But if the salt have lost its savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is thenceforth good for nothing, but to be cast out and to be trodden under the foot of men." In other words, if saying that if a person is considered the salt of the earth, then that would mean that that person would indeed be considered the best of the best. The creme de la creme, the exceptional, somebody of immense value. However, if you have lost what makes you valuable, and that can be various things such as your attitude, your individuality, character, skill, or even your talent, then you are no longer special and just be considered one of many who are insignificant or indistinguishable in comparison to others. When the scripture said trodden under the foot of men, I started thinking about who in this day and time would actually have the power to walk over men, let alone trod over them. My conclusion came to the rich of course, but specifically corporations and various industries that has a strong grip on many aspects that are central to the building blocks of society, culture, and of course economic stability. Not to sound political, but what if the golden idea is a representation of corporate greed? According to the really vague text in the beginning of the game, it said that creation intention merged and grew. While this was being said, an image of a bridge being broken was simultaneously being shown as the player was reading the text. This can mean in a literal sense that creation and intention were two places that existed that specialized in certain areas that complemented each other. But also in a metaphorical sense, this could mean that again, greed came in and sought to utilize both areas for its own selfish wants, taking away the freedoms and oppressing the inhabitants while utilizing the fruits of these native people's creations, all the while writing their intentions and purpose to fulfill the golden idea's agenda. The parallels of how this game's story echoes the similar challenges Dandara, the game protagonist, and the actual historical figure had to face still relates to not just this game's conflict, but also history and modern day's problems. I don't think this is a mere coincidence. If the golden idea has its way in this game just like in reality with corporate greed, this would destroy the very soul that authenticates and validates one as a unique individual and destroy the principles that make people human. The golden idea will replace everything that is natural with artificial, freedom will become slavery, basic human rights will become allowances and privileges, and buying and owning things will sadly just become renting and streaming. Critical thinking would be forbidden, shunned, or outlawed, while behaviors even horrifying in nature will be praised if it satisfies the interests of whoever's dominating. Living life would lose its meaning and people would just simply be existing. Nobody would benefit from this except for the ones that's in power. A disturbing possibility is maybe, just maybe aside from this game's narrative, in reality, this principle of a golden idea, has it already won? I mean, from a somewhat sociological perspective, let's look at the behavior patterns of a lot of people in everyday life. Especially over here in modern day America. Over here, capitalism is king, and a lot of people's lives just consist of working until death to the point they really don't know nothing else in terms of enjoying all their life has to offer. Due to how society has conditioned them, they don't even for a second entertain the thought of exploring other possibilities. But just like Dandara in this game and the many historical figures throughout history, with those to come, there will always be those who will not only fight for their freedom, but for their humanity. This fight is something that most people will have arriving at their doorstep in one form or another. Some people was thrown into it, while others may have been born into it. To the viewer watching this review, maybe it's already at your doorstep. Regardless, this type of battle does not discriminate between race, class, sex, or even age. The goal and hope is that people can reconnect with their humanity that longs to be acknowledged. Nowadays, if humanity was a principle somehow physically manifested, I could imagine it losing faith that it may be found, and forever be lost in a daily shuffle of consequences, circumstances, and the type of culture people bring about as time goes by. My apologies, I got a little bit deep there, but back to the review. The gameplay of Dandara is a unique action platformer and Metroidvania-like game. Normally in those games, the main character has the ability to jump and move either left or right freely. This game though throws all of that out the window and instead utilizes a game mechanic that has the player being stuck to whatever platform they're on and relying on which direction specifically before moving. When determining which direction to proceed to, a marker which is displayed by a line will appear. If the line has a green arrow, that means you can proceed. If not, it only means that the desired destination is out of reach, blocked, or cannot be accessible. Whenever you see this white platform which is covered in salt, more than likely it means that the player can stand there. Now at first, this can probably irritate the player, but this game asks for you to bear with it for a moment. If you could do that, the player will gradually become accustomed to this way of playing without even realizing it. Once you get past the understanding of how this game plays, you will be maneuvering through obstacles in no time. The primary reason for this style of gameplay is due to the theme of being in a place that is directionless, meaning that gravity does not hold dominance over the land that you're traversing through. The player also has the ability to shoot out beams of energy as a means to defend herself. The downside of it is that in order to fire it off, the player has to wait a second or two in order for it to be charged. Along the way, just like in any Metroidvania, there will be passing sections that will be blocked off until you can obtain the item or a new ability that will allow you to explore the areas prohibited. The enemies that you encounter at first very easy. This is to slowly get the player accustomed to the game, but as you unlock other areas, enemies become more challenging. Some of them will become more frustrating and might end up destroying you a few times, due to the player being confined to the limitations this style of gameplay binds the player to. There were multiple times where I would enter an area with two of the same enemies that were fast, hit hard, and within 20 seconds left me obliterated. These enemies had the freedom to move about at will while I was stuck to a platform, having to determine which direction to go without being hit and at the very same time, doing my best to time an attack correctly since I only have 1 second to wait for it to fire. Luckily, before you get to these enemies, the player will find objects that will grant you substitutions to your primary attack. These different attacks are faster, seemingly more powerful, and can get you through certain obstacles. But the catch is you only can use them a few times before your magic runs out, which is depicted by this yellow gauge. But more importantly, you should take note of these hearts, which is pretty much how many times you can get hit before you're dead. Along the way, you'll encounter these tents where the game will save your progress, indicated by the spinning icon, replenish all your health, magic, and items. Also, you can check out the items you have obtained and what they are used for in the glossary. But the primary reason for this tent is important because it is where you will purchase upgrades for Dandara. The currency of this game is called salt, which is gained by enemies you defeat and also by the chests you open up. Kinda like another game I know. Speaking of chests, these items are found throughout the game and will contain items needed such as salt, new magic abilities, key story items, and things that can help restore your magic and health. Along with tents, the player will also find these flasks scarcely located throughout the game that only saves and restore your items and health. Also, in addition to the enemies that you will encounter, you will come face to face with these mini bosses that will later on become normal enemies. And as far as the actual bosses, you'll have at least 2 segments and transitions that you'll have to understand quickly in order to defeat them. But if you lose or forget your position, you have a map that will help guide you and icons that will tell you important areas to remember, like those tents we were just talking about. The map can be a bit tricky though to understand due to Dandara's position and camera angle constantly changing. When you open your map, you can adjust your map to the normal view where you can see where you are exactly on the map proportionate to Dandara's position. A word of caution though, whenever you die, all the salt that you've collected is taken away from you, and in order to get it back, you have to return to the area in which you died to retain them. Just like in another game I know. The place where you die will be presented by a blue X on your map. If you die again while en route to reclaiming what you lost, kiss all of that salt goodbye forever. Unless you have godlike reflexes or are just a king of games, frustrating situations like this may happen once or twice. Another thing that Dandara will have the player be very aware of are the environmental obstacles that can be downright more brutal than any boss you will encounter. My last and final advice especially is to do as much as you can to kill off the monsters that cause or allow for environmental obstacles to operate, and destroying more doors that are difficult to open. By doing this, it will make traversing across revisited levels easier, and plus due to the respawning with your full health, magic, and inventory intact combined with your newfound familiarity with the level, the player can proceed even further. The music of Dandara is definitely one of the most key ingredients to bringing this game to life. The music was done by Tomas Kaufman, a well-versed man that has done music and sound design for various indie titles as well. Dandara's OST features some of the most diverse, organic, and dense music compositions that is hard to ignore. The multi-layered songs takes its listeners on a journey that makes it feel like you're being submerged in a place in possession of their own individual and unique culture. Since in conjunction of the other natural instruments is rich in quality and tone. Songs like Dandara's Purpose serves as a perfect introduction to set up sonically what is to come. My two personal favorite tracks is Hidden in Logic and Weight of a Doubt. Hidden in Logic has so many layers of rhythms coming together with this ever-present industrial backdrop. My other favorite track, Weight of a Doubt, has this synth that comes in and takes you from a tribal tone into something completely otherworldly. Tomas Kaufman pretty much knocked the music for Dandara out the park. He is also responsible for the sound design for Dandara as well. I'll get into that in a little bit. You can check out the OST and Tomas' website to see his works for yourself. The links will be provided in the description below as always. The sound design was done very well. Hearing Dandara fire off a blast has a satisfying sound effect to it when it charges up, and when it fires it packs a punch to it. During the moments of dialogue, the sound of tribal wooden sticks knocking when each letter is presented in the dialogue box sound like it's doing a solo that's about to go into a complete song. The environmental sound effects are present and accounted for. Overall, the sound design was done quite well. Now that I've went over everything, it's time for me to give this game a rating. I'm going to give Dandara a 9.5 out of 10. The gameplay is really good. Also, knowing that this game and its creators also had to find some way to translate a game that was originally for mobile phones and touchscreen electronics over to consoles with configurations using buttons makes me appreciate this game even more. The story and background that hints into a history that many games don't have the guts to do, or people would even like to acknowledge, is something that's commendable and brave. This game serves as an example as one of the reasons why I like indie games so much. This game is currently available for Xbox One, PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, Steam for Mac and PC for only like $15. The mobile versions for Apple iOS or Google Play has a price tag for only like $6. There is a free added-on DLC or update of this game known as Trials of Fear that's in the works. This update comes with more abilities and areas to further flesh out the story. I will be reviewing that when I get my hands on it. I was wondering if this update was only going to be exclusive for PC and Mac. But some time ago I tweeted out to Long Hat House and they told me not to worry about it because they're working on the port to the PlayStation 4. But overall, Dandara as far as the base game is concerned is really nice. Try it out for yourself and tell me what you think. Peace y'all.
2 weeks later.
Trials of Fear, as I said, is a DLC expansion that supposedly fleshes out the story a bit more, along with more areas to journey through, more abilities, and you don't necessarily have to beat the game before playing this. However, I fully recommend you doing so, or at least be at level 30 or close within the base game. The reason why I say this is because if you're not fully prepared, this DLC will eat you up and chew you out. Now, getting into this expansion at first, I was a little bit lost on how to access the new content, so I went to the area where I thought was emphasized the most during the trailer for this game's update. Lo and behold, I was right. So after you come here, a sequence takes place where originally these things right here would just attack you, but now they have become doors to another realm. This is what the new content gets underway. In my mind, I originally thought that this DLC was just going to add more sections and domains just like the other domains were on the map. This was just my perspective that I felt justified when coming across these three, thinking that their challenges were the so-called Trials of Fear. After completing these challenges, I honestly believed that was it, but nope. I have fully underestimated the amount of content this DLC has. Trials of Fear pulls a Castlevania Symphony of the Night on you. The more I played this DLC, the more it became apparent that this new land or realm that you are in is entirely a new map. Let's just say you beat the main game, cover every area of the map. With this DLC, Dandara asks you to do it again, but this time in a somewhat bizarre world, mirroring the regular world that you first completed. Think of the classic Zelda: A Link to the Past and how you go from the regular world to the dark world. The best thing about this update is that it's not simply a copy and paste of the base game, meaning that there are different levels, the challenges Dandara will have to face are refreshing and creatively thought out, which delivers to the player ways to experience more new gameplay mechanics, while all at the same time diving deeper into the game's story. You meet more new characters and you learn a bit more of the relationships between them and the characters you've already met on your journey, not to mention how certain entities affected the inhabitants of this land with their actions. The creators pretty much just gave us another full game, needless to say. The mere fact that this was a free update is a blessing from the developers. Even a new updated version of the original soundtrack is available. Links to it will be in the description below as always. Previously I gave this a 9.5, but due to the added on content that extends the playtime and fulfills my hunger to dive deeper back into the land of salt, I'm going to give it a 9.9. This is definitely a game to pick up. Hope you all enjoyed as much as I did. Stay safe and peace, y'all.